Good afternoon, everyone. I am Trupti, and on behalf of Hetero, I'm delighted to welcome you all to today's webinar on the next era of PrEP, integrating long acting prevention into practice. Thank you for joining us from across different regions and healthcare settings. Over the past decade, pre exposure prophylaxis or PrEP has transformed the landscape of HIV prevention. Today, we stand at another significant milestone as long acting prevention options begin to reshape how we approach adherence, accessibility, patient centered care. For years, HIV has relied on its capsid to protect its secrets. Lenacapavir seems to have adopted a different physiology. What happens inside the capsid should definitely not stay inside the capsid. To help us explore these clinical critical topics, we are honored to have distinguished experts with us today who will share all the latest clinical insights, real world experiences, and practical strategies for incorporating long acting prevention into healthcare delivery. We hope that this webinar provides meaningful insights that you can apply in your practice and contribute to the ongoing advancement of HIV prevention. So, without further ado, let us begin with today's program. Tech team, next slide, please. Next. So, in case if you have missed the pre-survey form, kindly fill the same by using the QR code portrayed on the slide. Next. So, as we move towards today's program, this is the agenda where we first will move to the lecture with our keynote speaker, Dr. Linda Gale Becker, followed by a panel discussion with Dr. Rujipas Sirija Tufat and Dr. Cleophas Chimbetete. Next. So it is my distinct privilege and pleasure to welcome today's keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Linda Gale Becker. Professor Becker is a globally respected clinician scientist and one of the foremost leaders in HIV prevention and treatment, and also tuberculosis, adolescent health, and public health implementation as well. She currently serves as a Chief Executive Officer at the Desmond Tutu Health Foundation. She is also the director of the Desmond Tutu HIV Center and a professor of medicine at the University of Cape Town. Her contributions to global health extend far beyond academia and clinical research. Professor Becker has played a pivotal role in shaping HIV prevention and treatment strategies worldwide and served as a president of the International AIDS Society from the year 2020 to 2022. She continues to provide strategic guidance to several international organizations, including the World Health Organization and UNAIDS, helping drive policy and innovation in HIV prevention, treatment, and pandemic preparedness. Over the course of her distinguished career, she has led and collaborated on numerous landmark clinical trials and implementation studies focused on HIV prevention, antiretroviral therapy, PrEP, tuberculosis, and adolescent health. Her work has resulted in more than 400 peer reviewed publications and has significantly influenced global HIV policy and clinical practice. Today, as we explore the next era of PrEP, integrating long acting prevention into practice, there could be no better expert to guide us through the evolving HIV prevention landscape and the transformative potential of the long acting prevention strategies. Professor Becker, we are truly honored to have you with us today. On behalf of Hetero and all the participants, I extend a very warm welcome and invite you to share your insights with us. Professor Becker, the virtual stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Tripti. Thank you for that introduction. I'm going to call up my slides and we'll get underway. Thank you again for having me. I'm very pleased to be here today. And in the next 30 to 35 to 40 minutes, I'll really look at this next era of pre-exposure prophylaxis, namely that of long-acting. Again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. These are relevant disclosures. Now, HIV prevention certainly has come a long way from the early days of abstinence, faithfulness, condomizing, to really a time where antiretrovirals form the basis of today's modern prevention and gives us a pre-exposure prophylaxis specifically. We do, of course, and we have relied heavily on antiretroviral therapy as prevention. In other words, secondary prevention, namely through treatment of people living with HIV to the point that their virus is undetectable, because we know that when viral load is undetectable, then that person is no longer infectious in terms of sexual transmission. And all of the headway we've made in driving down incidence across the globe has largely to date been through this form of secondary prevention. But we know as well that we still have 1.3 million new infections, amounting to more than 3,000 infections every day. And importantly, there is still quite a long way to go to reach that point where everybody around the planet who are living with HIV have been tested, are on treatment, and virally suppressed. To date, these are the numbers that exist: 87% tested, 77% of those on treatment, and only 73% of those virally suppressed. So this amounts to almost 10 million people still needing to be found, tested, got onto therapy, and virally suppressed, half of which live in my region of the world. So perhaps not surprisingly, we are still seeing a great deal of breakthrough infection. As mentioned, almost half of those in key and vulnerable people around the world globally, and the other half occurring in adolescent girls and young women here in sub-Saharan Africa. So still a great deal of work to be done. But it is now more than 15 years ago that we asked the simple question: can a pill a day of antiretroviral therapy prevent HIV? And this was the global PrEP study. It was honing in on the NRTI, the ability of the virus to inhibit the reverse transcriptase. And subsequently, we know not only does it work in that regard on the reverse transcription, but actually we also now have other targets that we can use for pre-exposure prophylaxis. The most recent, of course, that of capsid inhibition, as you mentioned earlier. And as a result, pre-exposure prophylaxis in HIV prevention has been named now one of the 21 best ideas of the 21st century. And we know a great deal about oral PrEP. Oral PrEP using emtricitabine with tenofovir diphosphate can really prevent HIV in women, men, pregnant people, non-pregnant people. It can be done on a daily regimen or an on-demand regimen. And we know also now that its close cousin, emtricitabine with tenofovir alafenamide, is also effective and efficient in stopping HIV transmission. So when we think of prevention as this train, which I like to think of it, all the various carriages bringing different kinds of prevention, then the carriage that is called pre-exposure prophylaxis really does have very well-established short-acting PrEP now. But we also know that short-acting PrEP, or PrEP that needs to be taken daily or at the time of exposure, is a challenge for some. People forget, people don't always have their tablets with them, and this is particularly young people. So you see in this study we conducted amongst adolescents aged 15 to 19 in Cape Town and Johannesburg, we found that these young people really struggled to persist with daily pre-exposure prophylaxis. Thinking more about this and picking up on what other diseases are doing, whether psychiatry or, other fields of medicine, one solution for challenges to daily adherence is to think about formulations that require less frequent, more prolonged dosing, and potentially more discrete dosing, not needing to take pills home. And of course, also introducing this concept of choice in prevention. And the first of these long-acting agents, and I won't say too much more about this, but the dapivirine vaginal ring has been the first to come along. It was first tested in 2016 here in Africa, and it is licensed in many countries in Africa now. It is a silicone ring which is placed in the vagina and prevents HIV by eluting dapivirine over time, either as a monthly ring or a 3-monthly ring. And again, we know this works in young, older, pregnant and non-pregnant women to prevent HIV. Next up were the injectable formulations, and we have the studies that brought cabotegravir to us. Again, we know that this is effective in men and women, and most recently, excitingly, the lenacapavir subcutaneous option. And I will be going into these in a little more detail. So the intramuscular 2-monthly option is using a antiviral that is from the integrase inhibitor group called cabotegravir. It's given as a first an injection at beginning. There's no requirement for a lead-in oral, but there is a requirement for a loading dose of a second injection at month 1, and thereafter a 2-monthly maintenance injection. Been shown to be effective in women and men, pregnant and lactating people, and it was licensed by the FDA in 21. We now know that an ultra-long-acting CAB intramuscular injection is under development, similar volume. It will also need a loading dose, and it is undergoing bioequivalent studies at the moment and should be available in 2027. There were a number of breakthrough infections in HPTN 083 that alert to us this notion of the Levi syndrome. So this is where, unfortunately, should people commence the injectable pre-exposure prophylaxis whilst acutely undergoing seroconversion, in other words, they have had a recent exposure and have become infected with HIV but have not yet seroconverted antibodies, it's potential where they receive a cabotegravir injection that the very powerful integrase inhibitor drives the viral load down and masks that infection. And this was well described, and I encourage you to go read the papers from 083 and 084 describing this notion of the Levi syndrome. This is a situation where acute infection is masked, delaying seroconversion and delaying an HIV diagnosis. This has led to some guidelines requiring antigen testing for diagnosis to confirm HIV negativity prior to starting long-acting injectable PrEP. I can say that in our setting, we have rolled out our normal point-of-care rapid algorithms, and definitely we have, through careful management of, ensuring that people are HIV negative, we have not required antigen testing, which would certainly make this a lot more difficult. perhaps we can talk more about that during the discussion. The second injectable is, as I've mentioned, that of lenacapavir, a capsid inhibitor. It works in numerous places during the replication cycle. So you see here places where lenacapavir is able to prevent HIV replicating. There are 2 registrational trials that have confirmed its efficacy. Purpose 1 was conducted in South Africa and Uganda amongst about 5,000 young women aged 16 to 25, and we saw no infections in the lenacapavir arm in that trial. It was compared to background incidence as well as an oral comparing arm with FTDF and FTAF. Purpose 2 was conducted all around the world in a variety of populations of people, diverse populations having sex with men. And in that study, in that registrational trial, there were just 2 infections in the lenacapavir arm. So here you see the secondary analysis showing superiority to oral FTDF, and similarly superiority to oral FTDF. This is not because oral FTDF does not work in these populations. It's simply, again, based on, was shown in the studies that we did not have persistent adherence in the oral PrEP arms. And so with the injectables, we saw really far more effective prevention. Now, importantly, in both Purpose 1 and Purpose 2, adolescents were included. These are people under the age of 18, so 17 and 18-year-olds, and it was found to be well tolerated and safe, with no need for PK on PK testing for dose adjustment in anybody who was over 35 kgs in weight. We were also able to, through I think careful exploration with regulators and ethics boards, to include pregnant and lactating people in Purpose 1. And so I'm happy to report we had almost 500 pregnancies in the study. There is a paper in press to describe the pregnancies in more detail. But what I can tell you here is that, again, found to be safe and effective in pregnant and lactating people. We did PK throughout. There is no need for dose adjustment at any stage during pregnancy. And in women who were breastfeeding, we found very little len present in the breast milk and even lower concentrations in the infants. So this is very reassuring. Of course, with an injection, there are injection site reactions. Both cabotegravir and lenacapavir did have as their adverse events mostly ISRs. In the case of cabotegravir, it's mostly pain. It's an intramuscular injection into the buttock. In the case of lenacapavir, it's nodules, pain, and swelling. The reassuring component of this is that in both cabotegravir and lenacapavir, over time, these ISRs reduce. So the self-report is that people get used to it, the tolerance increases, and the ISRs became less important. I remind you again that the nodules form in lenacapavir because it is a subcutaneous injection. It is a fair volume, and there is a requirement to create a little nodule, which becomes the depot from which the drug elutes over the next 26 weeks. So those nodules are quite normal. In people with more subcutaneous tissue, we often can't see them. And I will show you what it looks like in people with very little subcutaneous tissue. So you may actually be able to observe them in somebody who is thinner, but people with more subcutaneous, they may be felt but not necessarily seen. The sites for injection are the 4 quadrants of the abdomen. There are 2 injections that are given at the time of the injectable, so we try to make those 5 to 10 centimeters apart. And it can be the subcutaneous of the abdomen, subcutaneous around the buttock, subcutaneous on the thigh, or subcutaneously in the back of the arm. So these are the places where people may be able to be injected with subcutaneous. With the cabotegravir, it's a large volume, so we really recommend the outer gluteal for that. Now, turning to breakthrough infections in the registrational trials, as mentioned, there were none in lenacapavir Purpose 1, but in Purpose 2, we saw 2 breakthrough infections, and I've described them here. One in a transgender woman who was also practicing transactional sex, the other in a gay man who had rectal chlamydia at baseline. You see the testing that was done in this. There was no seroconversions in symptoms in either participant at the time that they were enrolled, and both developed N74D capsid resistance mutations, which is specific for the capsid during the trial. After randomization, when the trial moved to open label, we did see 2 additional infections in Purpose 1. You can see the one was diagnosed at study day 365, again with an N74D, so somebody who was using lenacapavir. The other was somebody who had not come back for her final len dose, and so there was a break in treatment, and no resistance was seen in that participant. Moving on now to special situations for len PrEP. First of all, to say that we recommend at oral loading at commencement. So the regimen is you get your 2 injections and 2 tablets of 300 milligrams on day 1, and then the second day, 2 300 milligram tablets on day 2. At least 26 to 28 weeks later, you need your 2 maintenance injections again. It is important that not all 4 tablets are taken on the same day, because there is not sufficient absorption to withstand that. So the tablets do need to be separated by 24 hours. And if that regimen is followed, the time to protection is by day 2. So by making sure that people have their 2 shots and their 4 tablets, we can show, and that's shown in the blue line here, people are above the IQ4, which is the protective level, certainly by day 3. If the tablets are not taken, then the injection will eventually reach IQ4, but that will take up to 28 days to do. Now, importantly, I will just say, in terms of drug-drug interactions, cabotegravir cannot be used with rifampicin. Lenacapavir is a substrate of CYP3A, and as such, when used with a strong inducer, such as rifampicin, then we have to take that into consideration. And the recommendation on the label is that on the day that rifampicin is started, people need to be given a supplemental dose of lenacapavir, both the injections and the tablets, on the day that the rifampicin starts. Thereafter, they can again, revert to their maintenance dosing of lenacapavir. Now, lenacapavir also moderately inhibits CYP3A, and so you have to be thinking about other drugs that are substrates of CYP3A. And in this group are the PDE5 inhibitors, such as used in erectile dysfunction, as well as the statins. And so the recommendation for both of these drugs, or these classes of drugs and similar classes of drugs, is that you start with a very low dose of those drugs and you titrate to effect. And then the last point I want to make about special dosing is, if people cannot come back for their injection in time, it is possible to revert to a weekly 300 milligram tablet of lenacapavir to bridge and that can be carried on for 6 months until an injection can once again be taken. Very exciting that there is development in this field. There is now a study called Purpose 365 underway, which is looking at annual lenacapavir. It will be intramuscularly administered, and as mentioned, it will only need to be maintained every 52 weeks. The study is fully enrolled. It's a bioequivalent study, and so we expect these results in 2027 as well. Do want to say there is a very rich pipeline of PrEP as well as multi-purpose technology coming through the pipeline. And so you should watch this space because I think we'll be seeing even more opportunities. Most closely coming is a monthly oral pill with a drug called MK8527. If you've heard of islatravir, then this is a close cousin of islatravir. It is also an NRTI, that is it again has a very specific mode of activity. These are the sites around the world where MK8527 registrational trials are underway. They are known as Expressive 10 and Expressive 11, both phase 3s. So you could imagine taking a small monthly pill, only requiring 12 of those pills over the year, and I believe that this drug is effective within 1 hour, so very effective and efficient if it should work. So we do now really have quite an extensive PrEP menu, and as mentioned, we actually have more coming down the line, 4 monthly intramuscular, 12 monthly intramuscular, and a monthly pill in addition to what I've described. Let me just update you where we are in the rollout of these various agents. Cabotegravir is now licensed in all of these regions of the world, and there are a number of science studies underway, implementation science. We've been lucky to do one of those, which is just coming to an end now. It was known as Prepared to Choose, and we embedded this within a large access program we have here in Cape Town called FastPrep. We looked at cabotegravir long-acting versus the vaginal ring versus oral PrEP. And what we found from this is, first of all, young people are with a little bit of assistance, are very good at making a choice. And we used a variety of different tools, including this fun quiz to help them understand their own personalities and which of these modalities would suit them best. We certainly involved peer navigators and counselors to help them make those choices with the appropriate information. And we found that when young people were given good choice counseling and their interest was high and they were confident in their choice, then they really stuck with that particular agent. So we found that people who had high interest and good confidence were able to make a good choice and stay with the choice, not necessarily having to walk it back or change what they were doing. When offered choice based on personalities, we found that the vast majority of these young people did choose the injectable option, and this was based mostly on lifestyle as well as the safety of the safety profile of the agent and its route of delivery. We found people who were on long-acting injectables were 6-fold more likely to continue and persist with their PrEP, although we did see some switching. So these, again, are studies we've presented in the past, and the papers are coming through. So there is some, decision-making that changes along the way. As I've mentioned, we showed that our normal algorithm with rapid RDTs worked very effectively to test eligibility, namely that people were HIV negative. We did ask this group of people how would they feel about a 6 monthly subcutaneous injection, and the results were mixed. First of all, people did value a lot greater duration. So twice a year would be very appealing to me because of its convenience. There was a little bit of concern about a subcutaneous injection and how painful that might be. And so, I think really a mixed bag of what people anticipated might be happening. Do you want to say South Africa has now digitalized this choice making, and as we're rolling out lenacapavir, there is actually a digital tool to help people make their choices. When it comes to Cabernet, it has been offered by the Medicines Patent Pool to 3 generic companies, and you can see where those licenses extend. And the news on the ground is that those 3 companies are undertaking their bioequivalence studies, doing their manufacturing processes, and we should see generic Cabernet by 2027. In terms of purpose and lenacapavir, there are 3 other important studies that are underway as part of the portfolio, looking at other populations, and a number of implementation science studies that have been supported by Gilead to get lenacapavir out the door. This is purpose 4. It's important to mention that we are looking at populations of people who use and inject drugs. It's important to check this for drug-drug interactions, but also to see what the acceptability of a 6-monthly injectable will be. Here are the places in the world where the lenacapavir implementation studies are currently underway. And I'm pleased to say again, we at DTHF are lucky to be doing one of those studies, and this is busy, but I want to say we are comparing oral PrEP to oral len long-acting to oral cab long-acting, and people can choose which they prefer to use. And we are following that up over 18 months, looking at persistence, tolerability, and the need for switching between those 3 options. We're also looking at how contraception fits in with a 6-monthly time frame, and we are introducing a self-administered long-acting contraceptive, reversible contraceptive DMPA. We hope that these implementation science studies will give us a sense of how many people are needle phobic. Do the nodules matter? What is the dosing frequency preference, delivery preference, and whether any switching happens? So we'll see over time. Quite a few modeling studies are coming through on cost, on how much len or other injectable PrEP we need. This is one study out of South Africa, which I know is also in press, but has been presented at various conferences. And what I would just say to you is this work out of South Africa shows that if we can roll out sufficient len, we could, by their estimation, bring our epidemic under control, one of the most burdensome epidemics in the world, under control 10 years quicker than what we would do without len. What about comparative pricing? Well, as you may well know, Gilead has signed voluntary licenses with 6 generics, Hetero, MCure, Dr. Reddy's, the Viatris, Furosans, and Eva Pharma in Egypt. You can see that excitingly Gates and Unitaid have struck up partnerships with both Hetero and Dr. Reddy's to come up with a very affordable price. So really starting to look comparable to oral PrEP. And we are holding out a lot of hope for this. Here are the prices as we understand them in the public domain so far. What about len for PrEP supply? What is happening so far? Well, PEPFAR and the Global Fund are supporting 24 countries as early adopters. So we thank both Global Fund and PEPFAR for stepping into this space. And Importantly, as you can see, these have launched already in a number of countries around the world. These are the places where lenacapavir has already been approved by regulators. Initially, we had hoped during this phase of the originator product, before the generics come online, that we would be able to get out as much 8 to 10 million person years of lenacapavir. But with the funding freezes of last year, we are actually only expecting about 600,000 person years to be rolled out in year one, with perhaps a further 2.4 million in year 2 and 3, by which time we hope that the generics will have kicked in to really bring those numbers up. Do want to say that when we set out to do the purpose trials, we were asked to please plan access right from the get-go. And we have really tried to do that to make sure that pregnant and lactating people are on board, adolescents are on board from the get-go. But this access question is really very critical. We have managed to speed things up, and the generics are all working very hard. The tech transfers happened, and we understand that we should see the earliest dossier submissions towards the end of 2026 into 2027. Some of the, at least the pill submissions have already been made. So what can we do now before 2030, given that we have missed our goals of bringing incidence rates down, new infection rates down? We missed 2020, we missed 2025, and 2030 is at risk. I want to just put, this is my call to action. We urgently need more scale up of LA PrEP, and there is really no time to lose. We know that thousands of people acquire HIV every day, young women in Africa, young people from key pops all across the world, as well as children are being infected right at this moment. So we need to think about this urgently. And we are not winning, because for every one person who started PrEP since 2012, we actually had about 3 or more HIV new infections. So this is working against us at the moment. Now, the estimations of what we will need, of who we will need to reach in order to really start bending that curve, have come from various places. I draw your attention to this one paper by Nora Rosenberg in CID that estimated amongst young women in Eastern Southern Africa, to avert 250,000 new infections, we would need to give PrEP to 25 million young people. And the GBMC group, together with partners, have looked at what the need is for key pops globally, and they've come up with an estimation of 11.6 million. So the first point to make is that we really have to shift our paradigm. This is not antiretroviral therapy where we know we need to reach 40 million people. This is a vast, greater number of people who need to be reached, and this is Nora's data. She used the fears to make these assessments. She's done the same for men now. And it really is, in some ways, mind-boggling to think how many people we need to reach to make a difference. And of course, as we become more successful, as we must when we roll out PrEP, primary prevention, it will actually, the numbers needed to treat with PrEP will go up. This is the prevention paradox. As incidence goes down, you actually need to protect more people to avert more infections. So we really have to wrap our heads around numbers. We also want to make sure this is not just oral PrEP. We want to make sure that these new innovations are reaching as many people as possible. And as already mentioned, we've got these early adopter countries, but this really has to go much further. Here's a sobering statistic. We've known about Cabernet since 2021. A communication directly from Bryn Jones at Vive Healthcare They have done an assessment. It is an estimate of the real world rollout of Cabernet, and you can see we're short of 74,000 people having ever received Cabernet for PrEP globally. So this cannot be the status quo as we go forward. We have to find a way to really move forward. And so again, AVAC's done some of this work to say, well, if this is how much oral PrEP initiations we've done to date, what is the possible injection use need based on 60% of new PrEP users choosing an injectable? But I would say this is way too conservative. We really do need many more people on PrEP. We also cannot be selective, just going to easy to reach people. We have to be sure we get to everybody who needs HIV prevention. And we now know that we have prevention, and prevention works in a very wide, diverse group of people. So when we consider all the prevention tools that we have evidence for today, it does not matter what the risk group is that we are considering. There is a prevention package that we can tailor for each kind of person who might need HIV prevention. We are now, of course, in the era of choice. So not only will we select packages, but we'll actually go to these populations and say, what is the prevention that you would prefer? What suits your lifestyle? And this is a beautiful study now, well conducted and published out of the SEARCH study run in Kenya and Uganda, which showed that when people were offered choice between Cabernet, oral PrEP, and PEP, the prevention coverage, the number of HIV exposures that were covered by prevention increased markedly, a five-fold increase, really reducing incidence incredibly. So we are beginning to get a very nice menu of pre-exposure prophylactics, where we can sort of say, well, what does this person in front of me need? What is their what is their eligibility? Why would I consider one kind of PrEP or prevention over another? And then, of course, PrEP choice comes into that as well. If we need to get those numbers up, we also need to make sure that this becomes very normal, very socialized, very democratized. And this means we need to portray PrEP not as something that goes to people who are risky, but something that is adopted by people because they want healthy lifestyles and they want to be protected and thrive. So it really is about how we get the demand creation out to as many people as possible. And this may require us to be quite differentiated in how we deliver the PrEP. Now, of course, an injectable agent that might need to be administered by a nurse could drive us back into quite a medicalized model. And this is where we have to think about, we've tried to decentralize, care. How are we going to fit injectables into such a concept? And it really means that we have to make the client, the user, the central person in all of this. What does this person need? So PrEP is now person-centered, not risk-determined. And this might mean that we need some wraparound services to make it more attractive to that individual. How do we bundle the services and layer them? And we have some nice examples. I already spoke about the Fast PrEP program here in Cape Town. We've rolled this out to 25,000 young people in one region, and we provide sexual reproductive health services as a bundled package. And what we found is when we provide this extra access, we had increased PrEP uptake and better persistence over time. So this model, I think, is quite important for people to understand that when you increase or when people have a lot of complexity in their lives, such as might happen with increased stigma or, intimate partner violence, or they are dealing with pill fatigue, it's important to then make the product as accessible to them as possible. So this is work done by one of my PhD students, who showed very beautifully that when agency, or when the self-ability to access PrEP reduces because of competing priorities or difficulties in life's complexities, then what you have to make sure is that you make it the prevention as accessible as possible, and optimize the products and the services. And it's our assessment that this is where the long-acting agents sort of add and enhance this. This is data we've shown in Fast PrEP, that when we make access very, very easy, we see increased persistence over time. Here's another bit of evidence that for transgender people, when we provide gender affirming care, which they perceive as a priority for themselves, that they are far more likely to take up our HIV prevention and treatment services. And then finally, here in India, the very nice Blue Shed project, where bundled care through a single window model, where not only medication for opioid use disorder and other medical care is offered, including harm reduction, people are dignified through showers and toilets and food packages and even haircuts. And here this project has shown that bundling services help to engage tens of thousands of people and improved HIV testing. There are other examples of differentiated prevention services, such as vendors in Sao Paulo, private pharmacies in Seattle and in Kenya, peer-led services in Thailand and Vietnam, and of course self-servicing in Soho in downtown London. So extraordinary innovation that we need to take to scale. Finally, we do need to move out of our medical model, health facility sort of model, and embrace community writ large, not only asking the PrEP users themselves what is best for them and what they could imagine is going to work best for them, but also embracing community writ large. We are going to need partnership with community structures. And I'm amazed to hear that, 40 years into the epidemic now, the United Kingdom is saying through funding that the NHS needs to partner with CBOs in the UK, because they are really driving towards zero new HIV infections in the United Kingdom. So very exciting that finally a high-income country is coming round to recognize the importance of community, and that community needs resources and backing. So I really highly recommend that as my 7th call to action. My take-home points then are that primary prevention needs to be taken to scale, comprehensively, respectfully, and equitably wherever HIV is circulating. Effective primary prevention is most effective when it suits the user and comes with options for choosing. Longer acting, less frequently dosed, such as lenacapavir injectable subcutaneously administered, may be the most effective mode, particularly for those who are challenged with daily pills, but the young in particular. We will only see epidemic impact when prevention is scaled. So I can't say that enough. And scaling, of course, depends on access that is unrestricted and inclusive of all populations. We do expect R&D to continue, and we look forward to long-acting oral as another option. And of course, these long-acting biomedicals are more complex. They probably do cost more to make. And so we need to find innovative ways of incentivizing, costing and funding them so that they can get to everybody who needs them. And with that, I will end. Thank you very much indeed for listening. Thanks, Trupti.
Thank you for the insightful presentation, Dr. Linda. Tech team, can we have the next slide? So we now begin with our panel discussion for today on the topic long-acting HIV treatment with lenacapavir, opportunities and challenges. So I move forward to introduce our first panelist for the day, Dr. Rujipas Sirajutu Fath. So it is my pleasure to introduce our distinguished panelist, Associate Professor Dr. Rujipas Sirajutufat from Division of Infectious Diseases and Tropical Medicine, Faculty of Medicine, Siriraj Hospital, Mahidol University, Thailand. Dr. Rujipas is a leading expert in infectious diseases with his particular interest in HIV infection and antimicrobial resistance. He completed his advanced training in infectious diseases at Siriraj Hospital and postdoctoral fellowship in molecular virology and pathogenesis at the US Military HIV Research Program at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research. He is currently an associate professor at the Mahidol University and he has authored numerous peer reviewed publications and received several prestigious national and international research awards. We are honored to have him today join us and share his expertise and insights. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Rujipas to the panel. Welcome to the panel, sir. Next. Our next panelist for today is Dr. Cleophas Chimbetete. So it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Cleophas, who is a public health physician, a HIV trainer, and a researcher at the Newlands Clinic, Harare, Zimbabwe, and also a lecturer at the University of Zimbabwe. Dr. Chimbetete has played a key role in development and updating of Zimbabwe's national HIV testing, prevention, and treatment guidelines. His research focuses on HIV, communicable diseases, and HIV drug resistance, and he has published extensively through the global IEDEA collaboration. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Cleophas to the panel. Welcome to the panel, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for invitation.
Tech team, can we start with the panel discussion? The first question, please. My first question goes to Dr. Cleophas. We are witnessing a shift from daily oral therapies to long acting options in both prevention and treatment. From a global perspective, how transformative could this shift be in changing the trajectory of the HIV epidemic over the next decade? Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, and thanks, Prof, for such an insightful presentation. So quickly, in terms of potential, and underline the word potential there is potential impact in terms of how these long-acting products are going to shift the epidemic over the next years. Why? Because in terms of prevention, I think Prof has said it very well. People are more likely to stay on long-acting PrEP compared to daily oral PrEP. I think the evidence is convincing there. And then in terms of treatment, we are beginning to see clients with treatment fatigue. We are beginning to see clients with who have got stigma associated with daily oral pill taking, clients who are mobile, who are from one place to the other, one city to the other, which may impact their pill taking. And then we've got special population groups such as sex workers, adolescents, both adolescent girls and also adolescent men and young women. So in terms of potential impact, it's going to be transformative, but I underline the word potential there because it's not just the availability of these long-acting products that is going to change the trajectory of the HIV epidemic. We need a reality check here. As long as these medicines are available in our journals and are available in our science write-ups, but not accessible to the communities that need them, then the impact is going to be really, really limited. So what is important is, as these products become available, what are we doing to strengthen our health systems? Because it is strengthened health systems that are going to be able to help deliver these products to the people that need them the most. So yeah, I'll stop there. But what's important is that if there's going to be impact, we need strengthened health systems and we need to deliver these products to millions of people. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Rujipas, can we have your opinion on this, sir?
Yes, sure. Thank you for the question and thank you, Dr. Linda, for the great presentation. Currently, daily pill fatigue is our biggest challenge. Long-acting drugs close this gap and are a game changer for both treatment and prevention. As we know, without a vaccine, they are our best tool to prevent new infections, especially for vulnerable groups who have difficulty with daily pills. And I agree with everyone. We need the healthcare system to assess that too. Thank you.
What is your opinion on this, Dr. Linda?
Trupti, I absolutely agree with the colleagues. All I would add is that, of course, at the moment, the WHO guidance is that this should only be used in people who are stable on antivirals. And as Cleophas and Rujipas have already intimated, it's actually the people who are struggling to take pills daily that really need to go onto the long-acting therapy. And so, I think we're starting to see those trials come through, even conducted on this continent, to show that actually we can go into unstable patients, so patients who have not virally suppressed, because I think these are the people who are going to benefit the most. And they're the 10 million that we haven't been able to yet start, and also people who are cycling in and out of care. So we really do want long actings that are going to benefit in those sort of unpredictable people who are struggling with daily pills.
Okay, ma'am. Can we have the next question? So my next question is for Dr. Rujipas. What do you see as the most significant barrier to integrating long-acting HIV therapies into routine clinical practice globally?
Okay. Thank you for the question again. We face three main barriers. The first is cost and accessibility. These new drugs are really expensive. Without government's support, they cannot make a wise public health impact. In my opinion, I think generic drugs should be held in this issue. And the second thing is administration issue. Current costs require doctors or nurses experience in Thailand PrEP success because of key population less health service. It is a peer-led model where community workers provide HCV service. Requiring doctors or nurses for every injection create a bottleneck for this. In my thinking, why cell injection pens like a GPL1 weight loss agent, this agent is now very popular in Thailand. If cell injection pen occur, it may explain an asset in the future. For now, in my opinion, we must scale up one-stop clinics to manage this short in this time. And the last barrier is a resistant concern. Because it does stay in the body for a long time, missed dose can cause resistance. We need strong tracking system to monitor cases that receive this agent. And in my experience, we found the case with dolutegravir resistance after receive cabotegravir injection in Thailand too. Thank you.
What is your opinion, Dr. Cleophas?
Thank you very much. In terms of significant barriers to integrating, I think we shouldn't make the mistake that we made when it was necessary, but with hindsight, we are realizing that we shouldn't run silo programs. So if we're going to integrate long-acting therapies, we need to strengthen the entire health system, not just have funding for long-acting art. I'm talking as somebody who is best in a low resource setting. We need to strengthen the rest of the health system. We need reliable procurement systems. We need to make sure that our healthcare workers are trained in terms of how they deliver long-acting ART, how they monitor patients on long-acting ART. We need to make sure that health systems have proper cold chain storage for those long-acting that require refrigeration. We need to make sure that we have regular patient follow-up, because some of our patients were now on 6-monthly, yearly coming to the clinic. Now, if we're going to have long-acting ART, which requires more frequent clinic visits, we need to relook at our workflows in OI clinics. So, yeah, there are significant barriers, but they can be overcome. But I think it's important that we address these. And like Prof. Linda said at the end of her presentation, we must make sure that the community is on board. The representatives of people living with HIV know what we are doing, know what are the advantages and disadvantages of long-acting ART. Over.
Okay, sir. Okay, can we have the next question? So the question goes to Dr. Rujipas. Could long-acting therapies eventually become a preferred option for a broader population of people living with HIV? Why or why not?
In my view, I think long-acting choice will be highly popular, but offering option is key. Pills and shots must coexist. Broad adoption will depend on two factors: affordable access and patient education to prevent drug resistance. But as you know, everyone needs every choice. Maybe they have their own choice. Not all fit with injection drug. Thank you.
Dr. Linda, can we have your opinion, ma'am?
Yeah, I would just say that I think all populations, we've certainly shown in the registrational trials that there is a very wide variety. I think we're waiting to hear about the injection drug use. But as Cleophas was speaking, I was thinking we have long-acting buprenorphine now. You know, if you could combine long-acting substance use disorder medication together with the long-acting PrEP, we really solve the problem. And so I think we need to think about these kinds of integrations for different populations.
Okay, ma'am. Moving to the next question. My next question is for Dr. Cleophas. What aspects of the data on lenacapavir are most compelling to you as treating physician?
Thank you. So, lenacapavir is a new molecule, which is a lot of our, if not all of our patients have not been exposed to lenacapavir in the past. So as a treating physician, you know now that at least if patients fail, there's hope in the future. So that's number one. In terms of resistance, unlike the molecules that we've been using, at this moment you're like, there's no transmission of drug lenacapavir resistance in the population. That's very appealing. Number two, what's also appealing is that it can be given twice a year, and I was happy to hear that people are now talking about once yearly. So this is really appealing. If we can take that from the prevention to the treatment side, the hope is that with sustained virological suppression, U is equal to U, it means that new infections are going to be very low. So yeah, I think those are the major appealing for me. Thanks.
May we have your opinion, Dr. Rujipas?
Yeah, in my view, the proposed trial show that lenacapavir is highly effective, demonstrating near zero infection rates for PrEP with just a twice yearly injection. Why is used for multi-drug resistant HIV appear to only a few cases in Thailand, its potential for prevention is significant. In fact, Thailand will launch a global fund project to implement lenacapavir on the ground later this year, as Dr. Linda showed us in the slide. I think the more benefits of lenacapavir is for the prevention.
Thank you, sir. Moving to the next question. My next question is for Dr. Linda. So, if you had to identify one key factor that will determine the successful adoption of lenacapavir in clinical practice, what would it be?
I would just say it has to be access, wide access. So we need to make it as easy for people to get to it as possible. I believe there will be demand. We need to make sure the supply is there. So lots of encouragement to the generic companies to get the factories going. And then, hopefully it will be able to flood the market.
Okay, ma'am. Dr. Cleophas, what do you think?
Totally agreed in terms of access and also equity. We want to make sure that those who need it get access to it. I think that's very important. So affordability and pricing, reliability in procurement, supply chain, training of healthcare workers, and also to make sure that we hear the voice of the patients. That's where implementation science comes in. People accepting it is their demand creation. But yeah, access and equitability, that's a great thing there. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Doctor. So, with this, we complete our panel discussion. So, as we have opened the floor for the questions, so we have few questions for Dr. Linda from the participants. So, the first question is, ma'am, does lenacapavir have any long-term negative effects on our immune system?
So we have not seen any evidence of that. You raise a good point in that clearly there may be a question, for example, around MK8527. People may be aware that islatravir seemed to cause at higher dose, caused a reduction in CD4 levels. We did not see any evidence of anything like that with lenacapavir. And I understand even with MK8527 in the dose we're using, in the PrEP studies, we do not anticipate any kind of impact on lymphocytes. So no, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, ma'am. The next question from the audience says, given the long pharmacokinetic tail of injectable PrEP, what strategies are recommended to minimize the risk of resistance development if patients miss the scheduled doses?
Yeah, so the current recommendation in the guidelines and on the package insert is that if you cannot come back for your injection on time, that you need to cover your exposure with either no risk of exposure to HIV. So in other words, some other prevention modality that means you won't be exposed to HIV sexually or otherwise, and or go on to oral PrEP. So you can take oral PrEP over and above the decreasing lenacapavir tail or cabotegravir tail. And this is very important because what we don't want, as Cleophas and I think Rujipas also alluded to this, we don't want a reducing dose of monotherapy to be exposed to a new infection of HIV with rapidly replicating HIV. That is the recipe for resistance. And we know that we will get resistance to the integrase inhibitor and or to the capsid inhibitor, depending on which drug is being used.
Thank you, ma'am. Can we have the next slide? So as we come to the end of this webinar, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our esteemed speaker and panelists for sharing their valuable expertise, insights, and experiences with us today. I would also like to thank all of our participants for joining us and for your active engagement throughout the webinar. A special thanks to the organizing team, IT support, Hetero Marketing, and all those working behind the scenes for the hard work and dedication in making this webinar possible. On behalf of Hetero, thank you all once again for your participation and have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tripti.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Linda.
You take care. Have a good